Isn't it funny how you can have more flexibility in your schedule, but somehow still feel less focus and momentum? Posting, planning, creating, learning, busy, but not really moving forward. In today's episode, I'm sharing the story of one woman inside CEO Focus who went from living by a school bell schedule to having all the time in the world, but struggling to create consistent momentum in her business. And when she stopped throwing spaghetti at the wall and started aligning her time with one clear focus, everything started to shift. Not just in her business, but in her CEO clarity, consistency, and confidence. And honestly, I have a feeling you're going to see a little of yourself in her story today. So let's dive in. Jackie said something to me a few months ago that I think perfectly describes how so many women feel in business right now. She said, Lissa, it feels like I'm just throwing spaghetti at the wall with no results. Can you relate? Trying things, posting things, starting things, learning things, busy, but not really moving forward? And honestly, I think this gets even harder in seasons like summer, where life has less built-in structure. You see, for years, Jackie was a middle school teacher. Her days were shaped by bells, schedules, clear transitions, and external structure. But once she retired and stepped into business full time, suddenly she had all the flexibility in the world. But instead of feeling freeing, it started to feel frustrating because without intentional structure, her time started drifting. And I think a lot of women are about to feel the same tension heading into summer. Why? Because schedules loosen, activities pause, church rhythms shift, days feel more open. But somehow it becomes even easier to lose focus, overwork, or stay busy without actually building momentum. Inside CEO Focus, we've been talking a lot about the idea that freedom without structure often creates drift in summer instead of fruitfulness. And Jackie's story is such a powerful example of what happens when a woman stops reacting to everything pulling at her time and starts stewarding it with intention instead. You see, Jackie is an incredibly gifted teacher. That's what she did for years as a middle school teacher. She knew how to break things down, help growing minds understand, guide them step by step. And when she stepped into business, she realized there was a huge gap for small business owners when it came to CRMs and automation. Most people either avoid them completely or barely scratch the surface of what they can actually do. So Jackie did what teachers do best. She started learning everything she could. She invested time into trainings, tutorials, certifications, strategies, really trying to understand, how do I make this work well? And how do I help other people understand it too? And once she learned it, of course, she started teaching it, creating the content, sharing the tips, showing up online, trying to help people understand how to leverage a CRM, not just to stay in touch, but to create systems and automations that support their business. So much so, she started to be known as the automation queen. But instead of feeling like she was building momentum, it felt like she was talking to crickets. Yes, she was posting and creating and learning and tweaking, but that growth felt painfully slow. And because she was used to being a high capacity educator, her instinct was maybe I just need to learn more. So she kept taking trainings, trying new things, adjusting strategies, consuming more information. Can you relate? And somewhere along the way, her business started feeling noisy, not just externally, more internally. She had too many ideas. She was going in too many directions. She had too many things competing for her attention. And without the structure she once had as a teacher, her days started filling up with activity, but not clear momentum. And honestly, I think this is where so many women get stuck. Because when you don't have intentional structure, it's easy to confuse being busy with progress. You can spend the entire day working on your business, thinking about your business, learning for your business, and still end the day wondering, but did anything actually move my business forward? That is exhausting, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because mental clutter creates time clutter. And when your attention is divided in too many directions, your energy gets divided too. You see, Jackie wasn't lacking effort. She wasn't lazy. She wasn't unwilling to work. She was simply carrying too many competing priorities without a clear framework for what deserved her focus in this season. And this is where the shift started. Not because Jackie suddenly found more hours in the day, not because she discovered some magic strategy online, but because she finally stopped trying to move everything forward at once. Inside CEO Focus, we started talking a lot about the difference between being busy and being aligned as a CEO, because those are not the same thing. You can spend your whole week reacting to what feels urgent, jumping between ideas, saying yes to another connect call, trying to keep up with everything, and still not give meaningful attention to the thing that actually matters the most in this season. That's not stewardship. That's survival mode. But sacred and strategic stewardship means we stop scattering our attention across everything pulling at us and start intentionally aligning our time with what God is actually asking us to focus on right now. And for Jackie, that meant choosing one primary focus for the quarter: visibility. Not grow everything, not be everywhere, not try every strategy, one focus. And honestly, that can feel uncomfortable at first, especially for high capacity women, because we think, well, what about all the other things I could be doing? But divided attention weakens momentum. Focused attention strengthens it. And once Jackie stopped trying to give equal energy to everything, she started experiencing something she hadn't felt in a long time: clarity. She even told me, Lissa, it's really helped me prioritize my focus for each period. That sounds simple, but for a woman who's been carrying constant mental tabs, constant ideas, constant unfinished loops, that shift changes everything. Because now, instead of waking up wondering, what should I work on today? She said, I know exactly what I need to be working on and when. Girl, that's powerful. Not because it made her life perfectly easy, but because clarity reduces friction. And when you remove the friction, it becomes so much easier to follow through consistently. This is why focused seasons matter so much. Not every goal belongs in every season. Not every opportunity deserves your attention right now. And just because something is good doesn't mean it's what God is asking you to focus on in this moment. But that is sacred stewardship. Not doing everything you could do, but intentionally focusing on what matters most right now. And once the focus became clear, the strategy became simpler for her too. Not necessarily easier, but simpler. Because Jackie no longer needed to wake up every day wondering what she should be working on. Instead of trying to grow everything at once, she had that one clear visibility focus for the quarter. And that changed how she approached her time. Because before, visibility was something she tried to squeeze in whenever she had time. A post here, a training there, trying a new idea, tweaking something again. But once her focus became clear, she started building her weeks around it intentionally. And she created specific work blocks for visibility: dedicated time to create content, time to follow through and follow up, time to stay consistent. Not random effort, rhythms. And one of the things she shared was my work blocks are better organized. Now, that may not sound dramatic at first, but when you've spent months feeling mentally scattered, organized work blocks feel incredibly freeing. Because now, instead of constantly trying to decide what should I work on next, she already knew. And that reduced so much mental clutter. And Jackie also shared this: I know exactly what I need to be working on and when. That right there is that huge shift, especially for someone who had spent so much time learning, researching, trying different things, and constantly wondering what she was missing. And as she stayed focused instead of constantly restarting, she noticed momentum build. Not explosive overnight growth, but steady movement. She shared that her profile views doubled in 1 week. And while that was encouraging to hear, the bigger transformation that I watched happening wasn't just the metrics. It was the confidence that came from finally following through consistently, the clarity of knowing where her time needed to go, and the relief of not carrying 10 competing priorities every day. And honestly, I think that's the part that people underestimate, because momentum often starts internally before it becomes visible externally. You see, Jackie wasn't just building visibility. She was building rhythms strong enough to support sustainable growth. And I think this is where the deeper shift was really happening for Jackie. Not just in her business, but in how she was showing up as a CEO and experiencing her time. Because when your mind is constantly divided, when your attention is scattered, when you're carrying unfinished decisions all day long, it becomes really hard to rest. Not just physically, mentally too. And even when you stop working, your brain keeps spinning. You're thinking about what you didn't finish, what you should be doing, what you might be missing. But clarity creates peace. And Jackie shared something that I think says so much. It's easier to really walk away and rest when I need it now. That matters. especially for women who love what they do. Because when your business lives in your house, on your phone, in your head, it can quietly start taking over everything. And one of the things I've noticed is that women often think rest becomes easier after success, after the growth, I'll rest, after the income, after the results finally show up. But what if that peace doesn't come from finally arriving somewhere? What if it comes from knowing you were faithful with what God asked you to focus on today? That, my friend, is stewardship. Not frantic striving, not trying to force momentum, not constantly chasing the next thing because you're afraid nothing is working yet. Just faithful consistency, focused attention, aligned action. And honestly, I think one of the hardest things for ambitious women is trusting the slow growth because we want visible proof that something is working. We want that quick traction, the quick clarity, the quick results. But so much of what God grows starts underground first. Roots before fruit, rhythms before momentum, faithfulness before visible results. And Jackie is such a beautiful example of what happens when a woman stops constantly uprooting herself and finally stays planted long enough to grow. Not perfectly, not all at once, but intentionally. And I think that's why she started experiencing more peace, because she wasn't trying to carry everything anymore. She had clarity for this season, and that clarity quieted the noise. So as you listen to Jackie's story, I don't want you to just think, good for her. I want you to ask yourself, where am I currently throwing spaghetti at the wall? Where is my attention getting divided? Where am I constantly restarting instead of staying focused long enough for momentum to build? Because the goal isn't doing more or even learning more. The goal is to become more intentional with what already has your time. So let me give you 3 simple steps to start with this week. First, identify one primary focus for this season. Not 5, not everything you eventually want to build. What is the one thing that would create the greatest momentum right now if you consistently gave it your attention? Second, give it protected time. When will you do it? Not leftover time, not if I get to it time, protected time. Make a decision about your time because what matters most should stop getting whatever energy happens to remain at the end of the day or the end of the week. And third, stay with it long enough to let it compound. This is where so many women quit too early. They don't see immediate results, so they pivot. They try something else, they change direction, they start over again. But momentum requires consistency, and consistency requires trust. Trust that faithful stewardship matters even before you see the visible fruit. Jackie's story is such a beautiful reminder that focused stewardship creates momentum long before the biggest results show up. So if you're realizing as you listen to Jackie's story, you don't necessarily need more time this summer, you need clearer focus, light structure, and support staying aligned with what matters most, that's exactly what we do inside CEO Focus. Because summer can either become a season of intentional momentum or a season where your time slowly drifts without you realizing it. Inside CEO Focus, we create the structure, the rhythm, the accountability, and support to help you stay focused on what matters most without feeling like you have to hustle or be pressured or try to do it all at once. And when you join us this summer, you're also going to get the Summer Operating Plan training to help you map out your season intentionally instead of just reacting your way through it. You can check it out at redeemhertime.com/focus. All right, as we end today, remember, instead of chasing time on a clock, trying to control it, receive the gift of time from the one who truly holds it. Steward it well, because as his daughter, you have time.